Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to do a lot of preliminary work. First thing, how many people are very interested in learning Linux? Sweet. Now, through the, what we're going to do, yes, is we have purchased for you Linux Pocket Guides. If you have a Linux Pocket Guide, some of my students, then you use your own Linux Pocket Guide, right? But we've purchased these for you because, yes, right? So Don and I were talking about more enablement, more empowerment. We want to make sure you have these. We're going to be using these later in the class. Good? Alrighty. So I also wanted to introduce one of the cloud engineers, super sexy guy named Nick. You know you are. Eye candy. Ryder. Ryder's a lot smarter than I am and better looking, so he'll be working on later. We're going to do kind of a part 2. The reason why we wanted to do this is we find that when we're interviewing people at Cisco, BB&T, a lot of the companies, their Linux is terrible. They're not comfortable. Even Friday, one of our kind of junior engineers came in and he was trying to do something, and I grabbed one of his Linux Pocket Guides and sat down and said, all right, let's teach you some basic things. Once he had that, it started working out. So I'd like you to, when we spin up your Amazon machine image, it'll be a Linux image to start. What we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to walk around in a Linux box, make sure that you know how to do very basic things. So when you do those interviews, you'll have, you remember show and tell? Everybody do show and tell? Okay, well, there's a lot of tell, but there's not enough show. So when you go to an interview, your laptop should be ready to show people. Let's get started. So when I say subnetting, what does that resonate for you when you start about subnetting? Cutting a pizza. Yeah, so anybody's been in my class, I'm a big foodie, so yes, requirements. And when I stare at you and I point like this, it means requirements. Why do I say requirements so much? I'm so glad you asked. Because nobody cares what we think. You are being paid on requirements. That customer comes in and says, I'm going to write you a great big check to fulfill my requirements because I don't know how to do it, and you have lots of money coming in because you're going to fulfill the requirements. If you do not fill the requirements, they're not going to write you a check. So subnetting is about a network. So a network is like a pizza. The size of your pizza, just like when you order it, small, medium, large, extra large, and we'll make a pretty neat analogy to this as you're talking about AWS. You're talking about how big your machines are. They come in small, medium, and large, and extra large. So when we start cutting up a network, we want to see how we can logically separate this network. Logically meaning virtually yes. That means we have a set of IPs that can talk to each other, right? Okay, so when we talk about subnetting, we're going to talk odometer. Now I've got a couple of resources I want to talk about, and what we're going to do is when you come out of a training, don't you want to add something to your LinkedIn profile? Yes. Yes. So in classes that I do, you want to add things that are relevant. So the first thing we're going to talk about is network design and network architecture. So everybody has a handout, yes? Yes. Excellent. So in your handout, you should have at the very top of that a network. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, what's the network? 192.168.0.0/19. Okay, when we start with a network, we got to figure out how big it is. When you buy a house, do you buy a house that doesn't fit your requirements? No. No. You want something that you can fit into. So when we talk about, hey, how big of a network do we need? That's based on your requirements. So if a customer comes up to you and says, oh, by the way, I'm going to give you a /20, what does that mean? I'm so glad you asked. Okay, /20 is right here, and this is a CIDR cheat sheet, by the way. /20 right here means you're going to have 4,096 IPs in that pizza that you can hand out. Now, we don't want a big collision domain. We want to carve it up, keep it quiet, keep the noise down. So we're going to carve this up. And they say, okay, well, you get this many. Question doesn't meet your requirements. Well, there's two things about this, and I'm giving you a very brief version of subnetting. If you want to learn how to subnet, I am happy as a clam to get a WebEx session with you and start working on it. If you don't get it, good, because my sorry hindquarters didn't get it for like 2-3 months because it wasn't being explained to me simply. You need to keep it Barney simple. If there's something in this class that doesn't make sense, you have 2 of these, put one of them up and say, I don't get it. Miss Jenny up here is another superstar coming over to the IT, is great because she'll look at me and go, you lost me. I love hearing that. Doesn't bother me at all. Because if I lose you, you have different perspectives. Some of you like to hear things and you get it right away, and you're a special snowflake because it doesn't work for me. I need to see it. And then more importantly, I need to touch it. So what we're trying to do, and I really appreciate all the board members and the logistics that come into this, from breakfast to cameras to Dave coming in and doing testimonials to you being here, all this stuff takes a lot of work preliminarily to come in. So we want to make sure that you get not only good visuals, but you're going to be touching and working through this. The great part about this lab is this is something I wrote up from a culmination of classes that I took. By the way, nobody at Cisco came to me and said, hey Rob, you need to learn AWS. I heard AWS pop up from our engineer. When he speaks, I listen. So about 2 months later, he came to me and said, hey Rob, what do you know about AWS? I was like, let me bring up my VPC and let me show you. He was like, really? I was like, yeah, I heard you say it. Limited restructurings. You know what those are? Fancy name for a layoff. So these limited restructurings, what we're hearing is because people do not have the adequate skill sets to continue moving the business forward. That should not be us. So when we talk about basic subnetting, if you need help, we want to add skill sets. If you need a skill set, send something to education at raleighissa.org. Say, hey, this is something that folks in our BU are needing. We'll find a super smart person to come in and teach it. That way, we're a lot more agile than most companies. It's very expensive to find this type of training. The last AWS training was really pricey to bring professionals in. And we really appreciate also Nick, his heart for coming in and waking up this morning and coming in and give us a hand. And he's also good looking. I'm just going to keep saying that. All right, so we have a 19, right? Yes? Yes. So if we have a 19, how many IP address possible do we have? 8,000. 8,192. Now, this is the interesting part about a conventional network. In a conventional network, each subnet, when we carve it up, you're going to have to subtract 2 IP addresses. That's for the ID and the broadcast. The broadcast is kind of like the community pool. That's where you can yell at everybody and say, hey, everybody, I've got something I need to say to you. Okay? So when we have this, I have taken your sheet, if you look at the top, and what we're going to do is we're going to carve this thing up into 6 subnets. Everybody tracking? Perfect. We're going to cut this up into 6 chunks, and these are going to be /23s. Now, I had a sheet up here that said what? What's a /23? How many IPs do we get? 512. Okay? So when you have this, remember, 512 is going to be our number for each one. That's based on the requirements that I set. Okay? So the first part of this is we're going to start here. Now, how many of you have a car that has an odometer on it? Yep. Fabulous. So we're going to start on the right-hand side, and when you start counting up, it goes from 0 to 9, correct? And then the one next to it clicks up 1, correct? Yes? Okay, perfect. When we talk about IPv4, we're going to count from 0 to 255. The machine counts 0 as a number. So this is a total of 256 potential IP addresses. Numbers, 0 to 255. Everybody tracking with me? This is important to know because this is all foundational stuff. Also, as we're talking about subnetting, we're talking about IPv4. We have 4 octets, right? 4 octets. Each octet has 8 bit positions. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Again, I'm gonna skim across this, but if you need this, we'll spin up a WebEx and chat. Each one of these has a value. The first one has 1, 2, yep, nice. Okay, great. You really only have to memorize, when we're talking about value, really 9 numbers when you're adding these up. And remember, the relationship is either on or off. 0 meaning off, 1 meaning on. 128 is the first number you need to memorize. 128 plus 64 is 192, okay? 128, 64, and 32 is 224, okay? 128, 64, 32, and 16? 240, good. All those in 8? 248. Plus 4? Good. 255. So knowing all those add up to 255. Everybody tracking so far? Fabulous. Awesome. Now, what we're going to do here is we are going to talk about our odometer. When you have a 23 in this bit position, the way I do it, and many of the ones I've taught do it, is it's real simple. When you see a CIDR notation, that means network. Everybody tracking? Okay. So we have a 23 up here, correct? So I'm going to start on the left-hand side, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's not complete, so what's the other one? It's a 0. Now, how many octets do we have? 4. That's only 3 of them, so the rest of these will be. Okay? It's great to learn AWS, but AWS is what? Another network in a different location, so the rules are similar. For Amazon, it's N-5, and we'll talk about the N-5 portion of that, the little Amazon magic. So, when we look at this, we now need to figure out what? The value here, so that we can figure out what we call our interval. Now, when somebody taught me this, they made interval way harder than it was supposed to be. Way harder. An interval is just 0 to 255. That's all it is when we talk about an interval. Okay? So, when we talk about value, if all these are turned on, what's our value here? 255, because that is all of these numbers added together. Everybody with me? Okay. These are all on? 255. Okay? Now, they're all on minus this one. So what's our value here? 254. Okay? These are all off. So what's our value here? 0. Okay. Now, in order to get the interval, the way I do it, if you have another way that works for you, just stick your fingers in your ears and don't listen to me. The way I do it is, how many numbers do we have between 0 to 255? 256. 256 minus 254 will give us our interval of 2. Okay? And if this is confusing, don't look at me like I understand it. Just, I'll put my email address up here. We'll be BFS for a little bit. We'll figure out subnetting together. And it took me a long time to kind of get used to this. For those, if you're sitting next to someone that happens to be a CCENT or a CCNA or a Network Plus person, or just simply somebody who understands subnetting, poke them. Say, hey, how's it going? If you don't, then come talk to us and we will help you with this. I do want you to understand the importance of being a really good, how many of you want to do security? Great. You know why administrators sometimes hate security people? Because we're stupid. And they look at us and they go, you don't understand the network? Get out of here. You have to understand the network. The best security engineer you can be is a person who is network minded. The best network engineer you can be is a person who is security minded. And those are cramming together, and I think Nick will agree with me here, or any of you please agree with me. We're having more stuff to do. It's not like our bosses came up to us and said, don't worry about the network anymore, we're just going to jump into AWS. They said, hey, I know you're busy, but guess what? I got you another toy here. Go play in AWS. So location doesn't really matter, but there's quite a bit of emphasis now on understanding the network on both sides. Interval of 2, everybody with me? So we're going to count from 0 to 255 how many times? Twice. Fabulous. Those papers there are vital for you right now. I'm not going to tell you why. But later on in the class, you're either going to love me or hate me, and I'm okay with either. So make sure you take notes. If you do not take notes in the class and you're sitting there like, man, I wish I'd take notes, I just wanted to warn you now, please take notes. I'm about repetition. If you want, if I can't do something very well, I need to do it enough times until I get good at it, right? That's all of us. So we're going to do that today. And then when you get this handsome man right here, he's going to do the same thing for you. You'll hate us both a little bit, maybe. I don't know. So I'm going to start. The first subnet we're going to have is called DMZ Subnet 1, correct? Great. And we have a CIDR of 23. That means we're going to start right here. I'm going to take that away for now because we got a 23. And we're going to play odometer for a second. So network is here. These were all turned on. These will not change. Everybody with me? If they're all turned on, they don't change. This is where the magic is going to happen, because these two octets are where the change is going to begin. This is network, this is node. Here is like the odometer on your car. And I recommend that you write these out, because when I was getting the instruction, I wanted to go grab the guy by the nose and go, why didn't you tell me that? Because it's not really that hard once you kind of get a hold of it. What I'm asking you to do is we're going to count now from 0 to 255 twice, because we have an interval of 2, because we have a 23. So if I'm looking at this, this is my ID. The next IP address will be 0 dot what? 1. Don't skip numbers. Interval of 2 and go forward. So your car, it doesn't go from 0 to 3. It goes from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. This one is going to continue to count until we get to, I can write, 255. Is everybody tracking with me? Okay, now realize that I didn't just skip from 4 to 255. I'm not going to write 255 numbers. What I recommend you to do is write these out so you understand how this odometer works. Now, okay, how many intervals did I just do? 1. I counted from 0 to 255 one time, so I've completed 1 interval. How many intervals do I have? 2. Now, just like the odometer in our car, this one's full, so just like in your car, what happens? Right. Good. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Jenny, and those who responded. This will become 1.0, because just like in your car, it goes forward. Now we're into our second interval. So we're going to start at 1.0, and we're going to continue. We'll do 1.1 all the way until 1.255. Everybody tracking with me? Yes. Fabulous. This will continue. Now, that is our DMZ subnet 1. This should match perfectly 255, 255, 254.0. Did we say the same thing? Yes. Also, it tells us we have 512 IP addresses. Now, let's talk about that. I'm going to keep it Barney simple because it works for me. We know in that 23, we're going to have 512 IP addresses. From 0 to 255 is how many numbers? 256. That was our first interval. Tracking? Fabulous. We had 2 intervals, so we're going to count again from 0 to 255. And again, we have 256 IP addresses. Everybody agree with me on that? What is 256 plus 256? Jazz hands. Yes. So this is a very simple way, and I do it the same way every time because I want the same result every time. Now, this should match exactly to what we're doing here. And I know a few of these have been to Cisco for a long time. You're like, yeah, this makes sense. Makes sense to you. Barney simple, everything good? Okay, I'm going to do one more because I want to start, because that slice of pizza is now taken logically.
How did you decide it was 2 intervals again?
Sure, yeah, that's a great part. So I decided it was 2 intervals because we had a /23, correct?
Okay.
Okay, 23 means, and you should write this down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, right? 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That's only 7. You have to have 8. So I'm going to finish it with a 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. With me so far? Now, we're going back to those bit positions again. So important that you know those. Once you get rhythm with them, you'll do it in your head. By the way, stop doing stuff in your head. Write it down. Because if you bring something to me and you're like, I don't understand subnetting, I'm going to ask you, hey, what doesn't make sense? You're like, I don't know. That is not going to help me. You've got to write down when you do this, say, and I love that question because the person who's sitting there and saying, I got it figured out and they don't, is the one that's not going to get the job. So thank you. It's super helpful. These are all turned on, so what's the value?
8, 8, 8.
Now, if I add all these together with 128, 64, 32, 16, what do all those add up to? 255. Now, that goes into those bit positions and knowing them. So these 8 positions, yeah, so 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And you're like, well, Rob, why? We're supposed to be doing AWS. That's exactly right. Because when you get into AWS and they say carve that network up, and you're like, OMG, I don't know what I'm going to do now. That's a bad position to be in, okay? I'm doing this because this is where no one would invest into me. Valdez Ladd sitting right there. Kick your hand up. I've mentioned Valdez in about every talk I've given. Why? Because he gave me a book I couldn't afford. It was $85. It was about a year old when I sat here in a review in this very classroom, and he said, "Where's your book?" And I was like, "I can't afford it," and he gave me one. Well, he won't take it, but that lit me on fire. And why I got my CISSP began with the book that he gave me. So when you get these opportunities, I'm not shy. If you know me, I'm not shy. I'll kick my hand up and go, I don't know what you just said. But Valdez gave me an opportunity, and we'll do the same for you. That's why we want you to have these things. You know why we think about these books? Because I couldn't afford it. And that was during a time when the economy fell apart. That was a lot of fun for me. Okay, so these bit positions, you're going to know these like no tomorrow. When you add all these up, that's 255. So you need to understand 9 numbers. Okay? 128. These two together give you 182. These three together give you 224. These 4 give you 240. 252. 254. And 255. All right. Whip out your calculator on your phone. It'll be fine. It'll work out. Oh, okay, it's fine. No, it's okay. All right. Now, your question was, hey, where did I get that? I'm so glad you asked. See these numbers? This one's off. So when we were adding all these up, when I got here, this was 2. This one's off.
Right, so you're establishing it's 2 because the last full octet is 2?
This one will be, but let me show you the math on that. Once I add this up, all of these numbers here add up to what? 254. And I'm not making that up because I added 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4, and 2. And I got this number. So I'm taking this number and I'm transposing it up here because it's either on or off and it has a value or it doesn't. Okay? These are all off, so it's off. How I got that number is I used 256 as my staple because we have from 0 to 255 is 256 numbers. If you take 256 and you subtract 254, you're going to get 2. That is your interval, which means we're going to count from 0 to 255 twice.
Right, that's the second exercise I did there.
Yes?
But then what happens if you have /22?
We'll get into that.
Okay, cool.
It's easy to do. No problem. I would love to do a class to sit in and do subnetting because there's a really great website. Let me show it to you. I use this pretty often because it's free. No, it's nybi.org. New York Business Institute has under support, strangely, they have subnetting questions, subnet question 1 and subnet question 2. And what this will help you do is they'll say, hey, future engineers or current engineers or super sexy people, this is your IP. I need 8 subnets. Go ham sandwich. And I can help you, and some of the students in here that are smiling can help you, and we can teach you how to do that. They also have another one, NYBI, that I like too, that's subnetting question 2, where my man right here, and I want you to listen, is, too high, is they will give you an IP address with a CIDR, and it'll say, give me the first, give me the last, and give me the subnet mask. Okay, great things to do. Now, if these don't make any sense right now, you go find a couple, and we'll sit down, and we'll have a WebEx, and we'll chat. These are things that you can do. Yes, sir?
You kind of go back to where you counted 255 twice.
Yep, I certainly will. So, in our first subnet.
That's the first time we've already explained that way.
Yep. So let's start here. So DMZ subnet 1 is our first subnet, correct? And we're starting here because this is where our network is going to start, our big pizza.
Right.
Okay? And we have an interval of 2. So we're going to start 192.168.0.0. Right? And we're going to count up, remember odometer, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 until we get to 255. Perfect. Now this is where we can't go any further.
Right.
That's our first interval. We counted from 0 to 255, so we got 256 IPs. Yes?
Right.
Perfect. Then, just like our odometer on the car, this is full, so this clicks over and becomes a 1, and this goes back to 0. Yes,
So
sir.
the point is that we want 512 of them.
Yes.
So in order to get that much, we have to have 2 groups of 256.
Yes. It's a great way of explaining it. So we're in an interval is twice, because we need 512, just like miles on your car. If we were driving your car, and just say this is your odometer, imagination, and you started in the parking lot, and you started driving. You're going to count the 0 mile, and then you get to 255 miles. Then your odometer is going to click, and it's going to say, hey, you did one interval of 256 miles. Now you're going to start all over again. Remember, each one of these IP addresses goes to that machine, this machine, this machine, this machine, that node, except for the first and the last. Fabulous? Okay. Once this clicks over, we're going to count from 0, then we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, we're going to stop because we only have a 23. You're the boss. You said, hey, we got a 23, we got 512. Stop at that point. Okay? That gives our first logical slice of pie.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to do one more.
I have a question.
Yes?
So let assume the IP address is given is 192.168.7.0. Then that means the second interval is going to be 192.168.8.
So you're going up by 2s. If you went up by 1s, you could be a 24, and you could do that. Sure. It depends on how you carve your network up. And let me get to the next subnet, and I'll kind of show you that.
Real
Fair enough?
quick,
Yes.
So the nodes, the maximum number would be 192.168.255.255 when you filled it all up.
Yes. Yeah. That means these will be completely full.
The very first one will be 0, 1, and the very last one will be 255, 255.
Yeah. So let me show it to you. Hold on. Let me show you. Stand by. When we go here, if you see this 19, so so when you're looking at this, and I'll talk to you about how we have that. We only have 8,192. So that's, I know where you're going, but just bear with me here. Do you understand in the 19 we only have 8,192? Okay. That's all we got. Okay, so we're going to count up until we max that. If you take and go in by 512, if you take 512 and divide it into 8,192, that will give you the number of networks that we can actually have. Okay? So that's the max number of networks we can have, and we can work through that. Okay? What you're talking about is a great question, and I think it's probably relevant that we do some subnetting as a class. We can do that. Okay, now, our first slice of pie, everybody good with the fact that we have a slice of pie that has 512 IP addresses and where we started, and then where we stopped? Okay, good. Now, what IP address did we stop? I just erased it for a reason.
192.168.1.255.
Beautiful. So that's where we stopped. Now, our odometer says once you have a 1.255, what happens? That becomes a 2.
Right.
Now, that is our next subnet. And I see your wheels turning. Yes, ma'am.
So what we're doing is we're carving up that /19 at the top
Yep.
into /23.
We are.
Okay.
And we can carve this however we want. And I'll show you how to do this in VLSM Calculator. But I would prefer you know how to do this yourself. Yes, sir.
So that means each subnet has 512 IP addresses.
Yes. When we put it into Amazon, it'll have 507 because Amazon is N-5.
So 6 subnets of 507.
6 subnets of 507, we put it into AWS, correct. But for right now, please understand, these are 512 each. So everybody's good with where we went from 0, 0 to 1, 255.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. That makes me happy. When I hear that, that just makes my heart go pitter patter. Okay. So DMZ subnet 2. How many intervals do we have? 2. That means we're going to count from 0 to 255 twice. So the same thing we talked about. You're going to do 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, until we get to 2, 255. That is one interval.
Yes.
Okay? How many do we have? 2. 2. So what happens to the odometer?
3.
Becomes 3 what? 0. because it starts. You got to think about this as an odometer that turns. And don't skip any because you'll lose IPs. So this is going to go 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4 until we get to 3.255. And this is our second interval. At that point, we have 512 IP addresses that we can hand out minus what we have. So far, so good?
Yes.
Okay. For those who are subnet gurus, this is how I learned it. If you're going to instruct and teach anyone how to do this, please don't skip steps. Because if you do, it's going to be wicked confusing. So this all should match up to what we talk about in any of these exercises. Now, this is called VLSM Calculator. You can go to the internet, it's free, and you can use this as a shortcut. So if you have internet, and you should, I'd like everybody to get to this website. Now, if you notice here, in the major network, I can put in our major, which should be at the top of your page, correct? You can change this, by the way. You can put 20 subnets in here and you can name them. The reason why I wanted to show you this is it's a great shortcut when you're documenting things. If you're a network engineer and you do not document your work, come see me later so I can hit you in the head. You are limiting yourself because you will never get out of your job until you explain simply for someone else to show them how to do it and explain how to do your job. They will not promote you. You will have 2 jobs until you die and turn to dust. So document. The first one we're going to type in here is DMZ subnet 1. And the requirement is I'm just going to put in, I know we have 512, but I'm just going to put in that we need 300 IP addresses just so I can get past the 24. Everybody tracking? This is just a requirement. And then I'm going to put in DMZ subnet 2. And I'm going to use the same requirement here for 300. And then what's our next one? Public. It's on the top of your paper. Okay, so public subnet 1. And then I want 300 in that one. And then I'm going to have public subnet 2. 300. And then we're going to move into private subnet. If I can type. And then everybody should have what I have here. All right, so this is the cool thing. Once you have this, then you can hit submit. Ta-da! What's nice about this, let me move it up a bit. This will let you know what your major network is, the number of IPs. Notice that's 8,190. It went, what? I thought it was 92. It assumed that it was going to take the first and the last. It was assuming the n-2 on that, by the way. That's sometimes when you look at the web pages, they'll jack you up and go, what? What happened? That's why it's the n-2. What this did is, what do we have here? So if you got a red thingy at the top, it's missing your major. Everybody got this? Okay. What's nice about it is I put my requirements in, right? Requirements. Thank you. Nick, how many times has our customer mentioned requirements and you've rolled your eyes at me? Too many times. Okay, good. Nice. So I look at him every time I do it because it's funny. All right, so here you notice that it tells us our subnet mask, our decimal mask. It tells us what? The 254, which tells us our interval of 2 that we just talked about, right? Then it tells us our assignable range. So our odometer is right there for us. It says, hey, I'm going to start at 192.168.0.0, but hey, by the way, the first available is 0.1, and then the odometer works itself up until we get to what? 1.254, which is the last assignable, and then it says, hey, there's your broadcast. Now, why did I show you this? Okay, I'm glad you asked. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You're going to go down here and you're going to type in snip, and you're going to bring up your snipping tool.
Okay.
And then when you create documentation, instead of freaking making a sheet, why do that? Take and snip this thing out. And now you have something you can paste in your documentation. It looks all pretty. Yeah, bam, let's make it happen, right? So this is the way that I work smarter rather than harder. So when I'm saying, hey, here's my network that I just made for you, because you're going to pay me a lot of money to do this, I'm going to make it nice for you, make it nice and pretty. Yes, sir?
I just learned this, but if anybody has a Windows machine, if you type PSR in the search bar, you can actually record every day. It records your screen, so you can record the whole. It's easy for setting up presentations, or I do it when I'm learning in class, so I can go back and watch what I did again.
Sure.
So if you just type in PSR in your search bar and hit enter.
You can also use some editing tools. One's called Camtasia, Cam, C-A-M, and Tasia, like Disney. It's free for a period of time. They'll watermark you, but who cares? Because you can make a video in the same thing. You can edit. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. Point is, make your documentation that when you do something, your boss is not sitting beside you every day going, hey, what are you doing today? You've got to document, because when you get your KPIs, your key performance indicators, you say, hey, what documentation did you make? Here it is. Also, what we're also going to do today is we're going to learn some security. What we're learning right now is network design, and then we're talking about network architecture. So these are things that you want to start adding to your LinkedIn profile. By the way, somebody's like, well, I'm not an expert in it. Who is? Right, and then how do you become an expert? Somebody goes, you're an expert, and all of a sudden we're like, I'm an expert now, I'm fancy. No, and you're only shelf life is only this long. So remember, we have a shelf life. You want to continue that shelf life. So everybody with me so far? Because we're getting ready to go into AWS. Now, we're going to do one other thing, which I absolutely adore, because I hate when people reuse passwords. How many times, Nick, have I talked about password management in our meetings? Too damn much, right? That's exactly what he said, right? But here's why. Don't use the same password. Don't go 1234 and 1234 bang. That's silly. What I'd like you to do is Google Keepass. Keepass. Keypass. So you should come up to this Keypass password safe. Bless you. I promised myself I would teach you this today because many of you don't have password vaults. This is one I use at work. Everybody's happy with the one I'm using at work. If it ever comes out that it's been defunct, we'll send something out. So you're going to go to this website. And then you're going to go to the 242 release right here, and you're going to click on it. And you're going to click on a little button here for you Windows installers. You're going to click right here. If you have a Mac, you have a vault already on there, I would hope. But for you Windows folks, this is a way for you to download it. Okay? I want you to download it because you're going to be putting in, because when we get into your AWS, we're going to immediately make sure that you're hardened so that no one can jump in there and jack you up. Just a disclaimer while I'm staring at the camera. Do not leave this class until we tear down everything that you have. If you get a bill for whatever you decided to do, that is on you. Okay? It charged me 18 cents. Well, here, I'll reach in my pocket and get your quarter, and you can go cry at home. You'll be fine. Yeah, 18 cents. I was picking on Cody. So you will get a little bit of a charge. It's going to require your credit card, but everything we're going to do today will be free minus a little bit of something. This is for you to go back and practice. Spin it up, spin it down, and then start working with the video. So everybody got this downloaded? All right. I'm going to bring up my Keypass.
Is LastPass acceptable?
No. Not the end of the world, but I prefer Keypass. But LastPass is fine as long as you have a vault. I just wanted to show you one in case you don't have one. So you see all this? I'm not the mental giants that you are. I can't remember all those passwords, okay? So I have a vault. Once you have this up and you install it, it will ask you to create a master password. That's where you want it long and nasty and complex. That's the one you don't want to put under your keyboard or on your monitor. It's the one you want to remember, okay? You will name your Keypass. Super sexy Keypass, whatever makes you happy. You want to put this in a folder that you back up. Because what is it? It is a file. It's a file that you can save and take it to another machine. Bless you. Now, once you have this is your Keypass database. This is going to let you know all the categories you can make. So let me just kind of walk you through this. If you go up to the top where it says Keypass here, you can right-click on that, and you can add a group. Okay, and I can name it ISSA Workshop. Everybody with me? You can make it, you can even change the icon, you can make it something funny, whatever makes you happy, and then you're going to add a group. Once that group is added, notice that I'm going to highlight it, and it is empty. Everybody with me? Now, if you go up to where it says this little key right here, I'm going to add an entry. So I could say ISSA Workshop, and then I could say my username is whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it super sexy just because I like it. Notice there's a little key down here. This will actually generate a password for you. How fun. And you can tell it how long you want it. So if you wanted 128-bit, if you click on, and I know it's probably a little teeny in the back, but it'll actually generate a password for you. You can tell it through the settings what complexity you want, special characters, uppercase, lowercase, etc. So that when you have your passwords, you just need to remember one, and you can put these in here, and you can also set them to expire. Your password should not be good forever. If you haven't changed your passwords and at least rotating them at least maybe every 90 days, I recommend, depending on the level it is, you will get pwned. They will take your crap. And we're going to also turn on two-factor authentication to ensure that your AWS is, and that's an identity and access management, so somebody can't come in there and be you, because it's something you know and then something that you have, which will be your phone. Thing I want you to do right now is I'd like you to go ahead and download, if you don't already have it on your phone, Google Authenticator. Yes, sir. Once you have this, then you want to put this in your machine, and this is where you're going to start putting your categories. Okay? So if you notice here, I break mine down all the way across. So when I need it, I have it. Okay? Also, it's backed up. So if for any reason that my computer just dies, I'm not going to stress. I'm going to go log onto a new machine. I'm going to go in my backup. I'm going to grab my file. I'm going to set it down, and I'm going to type it in, and I'm off and running. Otherwise, if you lose your passwords, or if your wallet has all your passwords, and you lose that, you are done. If you recycle your password, they'll keep trying it. Okay? So everybody got that down? Keypass. Okay, so if you, just one comment when you're putting your new one up, I can create, if I go under File, I can say New, and I can create a new database. You can create as many databases as you wish. It's up to you. So for you, you'll see a blank screen, and it'll say File, File New, name the database, and then stand it up. Okay? Just a quick aside about that. Anytime, I don't need this ISSA worksheet. I'm going to delete that. Tell it goodbye. Now, there is a little blue save box up here. You want to use that? If you happen to X out of it, it'll ask you if you want to save what you put into it. If you say no, whatever you put into it is gone. Okay, so do ensure that you save it and put it where it needs to be. Everybody happy? Cool. Nice. All right. So far we have our network. So you have talked about this morning network design, and you have talked about network architecture, correct? Okay. What we're going to do now is get you signed in. Now, I'm going to ask you a favor, pretty please. Small room. So when you're talking, keep it down to the whisper, super sexy, like you're trying to get a date whisper, and talk to each other. All right? Here's what we're going to do. Everybody have their AWS Console signed in? Yes. Yes. All right. Would you drive my account? Or would you drive my account? All right. So we're going to put this up here, but we're going to go ahead and jump into our AWS consoles. So this is the part where we're going to ensure that you have your two-factor authentication on. So anyone not have Google Authenticator on their phone? Everybody's good with that. Now, if you already have your account and you've already done this, just sit back and relax. It'll be fine. Okay, everyone, when you're signed in, everybody signed into AWS? Okay. If you go to Services, Nick, for me. If you look under Security, you will see AIM, which is Identity and Access Management. Click on that. Here, the second part of this is to activate your MFA root account. Okay, click on that. Mine's green because mine's on. Yours isn't. So when you click on that, you're going to manage your MFA. MFA is to ensure that no one goes into your account, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This is something that I want you to get used to doing for Google, Amazon, everyone, okay? Now, we're going to work on creating identity and access users soon. We're going to step you through the solid foundational pieces of this. The great thing about AWS and many of the other cloud providers is that they give you a chance to really do pretty much anything. Would you click on the services tab again for me? Look at the fun that's in this. Anything you want to do, Lambda we'll talk about, EC2 we're going to play with today. You can go in and do management and governance and even blockchain. So the cool thing about this is this free account is for you to go in and play. So if there are things that you want to learn that you don't have an enterprise level tool for, Amazon does. We're going to play in the free tier so that to ensure that everything you do won't cost you anything. If you want to go what I'd call ham sandwich and go big and go do that, that's for you to do. All right? We're going to try to find more free things for you to have fun with and actually learn. I would really appreciate, I'm sure Don would and the entire board would appreciate your feedback to say, hey, my boss told me that I need to learn AWS and I need to learn this. And then we could put a subsequent class together. But what we need to do is we need to build a network that we can work on. Everybody with me so far?
Yes.
Fabulous. All right, let's just talk about the console for a second. Your history shows kind of where what I would call to the Microsoft jump list. Where if you've hit a tab a couple times, then it's going to create that jump list for you. But if you're new to this, you don't have a jump list. So anytime you want to go somewhere, if you go to services and open this little search, type in the word V as in Victor, P as in Papa, C as in Charlie. When you type that, you're going to see isolated cloud resources. This is a virtual private cloud. It's a network. Okay? When you click on that, you're going to go and you're going to see this screen. Okay? Now, if you have a brand new instance of AWS, you're going to say, hey, wait a minute. There's a VPC here. Why do I have a VPC? How many of you have a VPC in there already? Aha. When Amazon stands up your instance, they want you to see that you have a virtual private cloud already sitting there. Right now, if you notice, I'm in Northern Virginia. Most of you, you're in Ohio. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. No problem. Amazon, and let's talk about just the architecture of Amazon. How many of you have two what? Ears. I remember this because this is actually one of the things that you'll be studying. You have edge, you have availability zones, and you have regions. Okay? Edge devices, whole bunch of them. That's where they're going to store content. Availability zones is a fancy word for a data center. That's all it is, and it's massive. And then the last part of that is you have regions. You have Northern Virginia. You have some parts in Asia, and that's growing. So when you think about these, I always think of EAR, because I'm an acronym guy. Edge devices, availability zones, and regions. That's part of the testable piece if you're going to take your Architect Associate. And if you're looking for tools for that, I'm actually going to work through that track myself. Nick's given me some great tools. One of our Splunk reps gave me a really good cool tool for questions. I'm happy to share this because why go try to find something that may not be as good? Or I can learn and say, hey, this really sucks. Go use this one. Okay? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to click where it says on this left-hand side, your VPCs. You will have a VPC there. Yes? Yes. Okay, we're going to get rid of it because I don't want it in there. We're going to have what we call greenfield. So imagine there's a VPC little click box right here. Okay? Click it, and then go up to Actions, if you don't mind. And click where it says Delete VPC. Because we're going to build something and then tear it down. I just want to make sure we don't have anything that would confuse you in which subnet you're associating with which VPC. Now, in this first little bit, we're going to go ahead and build our network and then take our first break. Our major network is what? 192.168.0.0/19. Nice. Major network. So what we're going to do is we're going to name our network. We're going to call this prod VPC. All right, everyone here have prod VPC typed. Then we're going to give our network, and if you ever have any questions, see the little I right here? you can always highlight that. You can always highlight that and say, for example, here's what you need. Amazon will tell you if you did something wrong. A little red thing will come up and say, hey, fix it. They'll tell you. Now, we're not going to work in IPv6 for now, but tenancy, let's talk about what that means. If you hit that downward box, all right, so everybody here, tenancy means simply this. Are we shared or are we dedicated? Shared resources, remember, Amazon is a big, almost like hypervisor. It allocates resources to you, okay? So that hypervisor says, okay, do you want your own little box to work in for security reasons and requirements, or do you not? For right now, we're going to leave it as default because every piece of this is almost like the cable company. Every little thing you get, they're going to tag you on. So remember, it's a cost thing. Now, we're going to leave it as default, and we're going to hit create. And by the way, I made these instructions nebulous for a reason. Why? Because I want you to take notes. These are not, I'm not going to spoon feed you. I left out stuff intentionally because I want to know you're listening. Okay, now, notice this VPC was created with a very unique ID. Hit close. Now, notice we have our VPC, correct? Yes. Okay, great. A couple things I want to make sure that you understand as far as highlighting this. First thing, when going around here, if you take, there's a very faint line right here next to this down. See where that thing popped up? You can actually click on that and slide that side to side to either increase or decrease that space so you can see everything. Because see your slide bar down here? There's a lot of information that way. Everybody with me so far? Yes. Now, if you go down here, Chad, see where the 3 dots are? And grab that and slide, go up to the line. Yeah, and slide it up. Yeah, beautiful. This tells you your description. This lets you know that here's your major network, and it lets you know that, hey, we're there. Basically, this is a shorthand for what you just made. Hit your, where it says CIDR blocks. Notice here, this lets us know, hey, this is the status we're associated. We don't have any IPv6 flow logs. Don't have any currently. We'll get to that later. Tags. Let me park here for a second. Tags are extremely important for you. Tags are how Amazon is going to be able to give you information back about your environments, plural. So when you tag something, your naming schema has to be agreeable. We talked about this at work. We have to sit down, me and Nick, BFFs, we're going to sit down and say, hey, we're going to name this one production underscore, maybe the name of the client underscore and something else, and it can't be this long. So when we're running scripts, we may want to have a script that calls out, and we'll talk about Lambda later, that calls out and says, tell me how many prod VPCs I have. Tell me how many environments I have for this customer. You have to automate. Part of this discussion too, and another skill set I'd really like you to add to your LinkedIn profile, is automation. So when you're adding tags, and we're going to add tags to our Amazon machine image, you want to think about what is your, that is not loud enough. Requirements. It doesn't matter. This is where you're going to get paid. If you build something that nobody wants, they're going to toss it and you're going to have to redo it again. Well, I don't have time to do that. Well, you got time to do it over again. And they will absolutely blister you. And more importantly, they probably won't give you the requirements. They'll come to you and see, he's nodding because we go through these conversations. Look at you and go, well, you're the smart people. Why don't you tell us what the requirements are? It's like walking up going, hey, I made you a ham sandwich, not enough mayonnaise. Oh, damn it. Okay. Well, hey, I made you another one. I want tomato on it. You don't want that. You want to get with them and say, what are your requirements? Oh, you want me to do them? I'm going to give you my requirements. And if you say no to any of these, I'm now going back to you and saying, you're going to tell me what my requirements are. Because I'm not going to keep coming back to you and go, how about now? Is it good now? Don't want to do that. Tags are going to help you because you want to make this, even when you're naming your boxes, when you're naming a server, where is it sitting? What context is it in? And that's just the short name because nobody memorizes IP addresses. So is it a security context? This is going to help you immensely. Okay? All right. All right. We're going to take a very quick 10-minute break. And Dave's going to get the first person. So we're going to go ahead and pause. Please be back here in 10 minutes because I'm going to get started. Go. All right. So to try to make this as fluid as possible, we're going to try to give you more. So one of the questions we had, I don't know who that person is or if I know if they're here, was, is this like the AWS Architect Associate? No, this is just a review. But what this does is encompasses a lot of the hard line, here's how you do the work sort of pieces. And this is how I learn, okay? very important that you are practical about what you're doing. So when you come in and you want to be a network engineer, if you sit down with them and say, hey, have you ever worked on a network? And they go, okay, show me. And you have nothing to show them, that's a problem. Now you will have something that you can spin up and spin down pretty quickly. Are you working with Linux? Sure. Let me spin up my AWS account, check mark. Let me go ahead and launch my Linux AMI, cha-ching. And then let me go ahead and go in here and show you some basic commands that I understand. Very important that you can do that. So good show and tell. So everyone should have their prod VPC up and running, yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go right below and we're going to build subnets. Just as a free commercial, every training class we're going to work with the same foundational structure. Once we move into the next kind of 200 levels reviews that we're going to do, we're expecting you to have this already up. Because once we get to 200 level, we need a foundation. So when you come in here, we expect you to sit down and have this up and running. So this is about practicing, okay? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a subnet. So you should be here, and then on your left, or my left-hand side, your left-hand side, your VPCs, right below that is where it says subnets. Your VPCs are all your networks, and then we're going to go into subnets. Once you're into subnets, hit Create Subnet. This is the part where we're going to take our pizza, our 192.168.0.0/19, and we're going to start slicing it up. Remember, these are logically separated, which means they can't talk to each other until you allow that. So DMZ Subnet 1 will be the name. If you use the drop down here, this will let you know your prod VPC is up. Now, once you get several VPCs going, you have to be very careful about what you're assigning to what. Now you're kind of seeing where naming convention is important. If you assign it wrong, it's going to break. It's going to mess up. Okay? Now, availability zones. Remember the EAR terminology I said? Edge. A is the availability zones, data centers. So Amazon has these set up. Super secure. I don't know if they have like guns and guards, but they may. Point is that each one of these are AZs. Each AZ is a data center. We're going to build 2 availability zones. Why? Because I would like to talk to you about something that comes up from Security Plus to CISSP and everywhere, which is business continuity, disaster recovery. So as we're going through this, skill sets. These are things that you want to go through. So we're going to talk about business continuity planning and disaster recovery. So how do we continue business if we have a problem? Disaster recovery is tornado hit us. What do we do? Now the cool thing about Amazon is if they lose a data center, an AZ, if you have that redundancy built in, that other AZ is going to pick it up. Okay, so that's what we want to, and why am I telling you this? Because too many times when I do training, people get done, I go look at their LinkedIn profile, nothing's changed. I mean, that's crazy. So what I'd also like you to do is on this sheet is make these. Now, I will endorse you for them, limited, because we're going to have a WebEx and you're going to show me. And you're going to tell me that you understand this. Because when you go to an interview, they're going to say, well, tell me this concept. Tell me what you know about this. And you should be able to tell them at a very high level what that's like. Okay? So anything that has a 1, we're going to put in an A. How many of you have a 2A? Or 3? Okay, it doesn't matter. We're going to put it in an A. So click A. Great. And then this is the part, remember we talked about pizza, right? Because I like food. We're going to slice this thing off. Right here on your paper, you're going to see the 192.168.0.0/23. That's what's going to go here. And we're going to associate it with this network. Go ahead and hit create. Ta-da! Now, pause here for a second because I want to show you something a little funky about Amazon. This is your subnet ID. You have 2 options on this screen. You can hit close, or if you click on the subnet ID, yeah, right here. You're going to notice, okay, I have something up here. This is a filter. That means if you build a bunch of subnets and you click that, it's going to filter just on that ID. Because you're like, all my subnets are gone. They're not gone. If you X that filter off, then everything will show back up again. Okay, that's just a filter. Now you're understanding why tagging and naming is so vitally important, because if you have 50 subnets and you want to filter based on something, you don't want to have a huge list that you go through. This is also about efficiency. Okay, so everybody got DMZ Subnet 1? Yep. So we got our description here of what it is. Notice that unique identifier, and we'll talk about ACLs in just a second. Notice we have a route table that's assigned to this, and we'll talk about that. If you hit flow logs, we don't have anything in there. We're going to get to that. Hit route table. Now, notice there's a destination and a target. The destination is our network, our pizza. And where is it routing? Locally. We have not given it away out to the internet yet. Okay, so we're just routing locally. All right, notice there's a tag button there. Again, we're going to keep this simple. We'll kind of go through this, and as we do 200 and 300 level courses, we'll get a little bit deeper into what you're doing. So first, everybody got there up and running? Now, notice availability of IPv4. How many we got? Remember, Amazon is N-5. Sweet. Okay, let's go ahead and create another subnet. What's this one going to be? DMZ Subnet 2. Yes, please. And we're going to put this in B because we're going to build 2 availability zones. So if something happens to our one network, the other one's sitting in another AZ, it'll go over there. We're going to be in B because we're building 2 zones. Now, I want you to think of this in this way. How many of you use Visio or some free version of Visio? Great. Now, Amazon has an inherent tool that will make this all pretty for you, but we're not going to tell you about it yet because I want you to know what we're doing. The point is we're building 2 zones. Okay? This is A. This is B. Okay? These are 2 different AZs. 2 different buildings. We have DMZ1 created, we have DMZ2 created. Go ahead and hit create on that one. Awesome sauce. Notice again, go ahead and hit this thing again. Notice that, oh, wait a minute, did not create one? It's filtering. Once you X the filter out, then they show back up. I just wanted you to see that because that really messed me up because I thought I lost all my subnets because I was filtering. Okay, now, the next one will be, it's on your sheet. Public subnet 1. Ones are in an A availability zone. 1, 2, or 3, whatever's in yours. Anything with a 2 that's on your sheet will be in a B as in Bravo availability zone. You are actually now architecting a very simple network. All right, go ahead and create that one. Yeah, and close it out. And then go ahead and make your public 2. The point is I want you to go ahead and get these built. Before you move forward, all the helpers, if you will go around and look at, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And when we get done, we're going to show you exactly what we're going to do. We want everybody matching. If you need help, all you got to do is throw a hand.
I just have a question.
Sure.
Is there a way to change the availability zone after you create the subnet?
No. Blow it away, rebuild. Yeah, it's almost like a firewall rule. Once you make it, you just kill it and move on. Please make sure your hands are up. We got helpers, they're standing up. They specifically came here today because they were gracious enough to come give us a hand. Make sure that all of your subnets look exactly the same. If you need, I would really like it if this is your first time, whoever's standing up, just throw your hand up. We want to put eyes on it. So that everything should look just like this. A couple things is this is like an Excel spreadsheet. You can filter by name, subnet ID by clicking on it. There's some really cool things about Amazon that aren't inherent, that they don't really teach you. They just want you to go, hey, do this thing. But your visibility, notice that all of our IPs available as IPv4 are 507. And then this is what it should look like as far as with their association. You see that they're right here. So as we're doing this in our business continuity disaster recovery plan, if this AZ goes down, this AZ will be up for us. Now this is all based on requirements. I used to work out Nevada and casinos. They back everything up everywhere, which is wonderful because they want you to come spend lots of money. right? And they want to make sure they lose none of your data. So if you went in like a particular drink, a particular thing, they want to know that, because when you arrive the next time and they see your card go swiping through, they're coming right to you and go, hey, I remember you like orange juice. I'm going to bring you some orange juice. Or hey, you like whatever. This data for them is extremely important. If they lose it, they lose sales. What we're going to do now is we are going to work on setting up an internet gateway. All right, so what we're going to do is, I know that these instructions are there. We're going to create an internet gateway. Wait, what's an internet gateway? Way out to the internet. Yes, jazz hands. All right, that was a good one. That was inherent. Okay, so jazz hands. We're going to create an internet gateway. And we're going to name this one prod underscore IGW. Should look just like this. And then hit create. Okay? Hit close. Now, if you notice, it says detached.
Right.
It's not going to attach itself to anything until you tell it to. So you go up into actions, attach to VPC, and then you're going to use your drop down and attach it over to your, yep. And then boom. All right, attached. Okay, doesn't mean we're going out to the internet because we haven't routed anything yet. We're not allowing, we're just setting up the infrastructure. How many of you have enough money to buy big high-end enterprise servers, router switches? Right, me neither. I ain't balling yet, trying. Point is, all this stuff they give you right here for free. Hey, have you ever set up an internet gateway? Yeah. Have you ever built a network? Yes. You ever designed one? Yes. They don't tell them it's mine. It's your stuff. You can change it. You can use any private address space you want if you know what the private address space is, right? The trick is when they come in and say, hey, can you subnet? And you go, yeah, I can subnet, because I got on the WebEx and figured it out, and then I practiced. Okay, so we now have an internet gateway. Perfect. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and build routes. So go to your route tables. Okay. Notice that I have one just like you. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. We can use this one, but I think what we'll do is we'll create another one. No, you can leave it. It'll be fine. We'll just use it as a drop down. Yeah, create route table. Go ahead and use the, I'm going to show you where the pencil is. You see where it says name here? See the little pencil? You can actually give it a name. So you can call it main underscore route. And then hit the little check mark. It'll keep it. And now you have a name to it. Everybody good? Okay. So let's go ahead and create a route table. And we're going to tag it. I'll just call it prod route table. And I'm derivating a little bit, so that's okay. Okay, go to VPC, do the association, and hit create. Okay, close out. Yeah, you can slide that over to make sure, and again, you in some of these you can adjust what your view looks like. Okay, good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to build a DMZ route table. We want to separate our traffic. We want to separate our traffic because eventually we want to monitor that, correct? Traffic should look different from a DMZ versus a private versus a public. So you can separate those streams and start really filtering. If you think about this, this is important because as you put firewalls and little barriers in between the different zones that you have, you want to start filtering for different kinds of traffic. Remember, the internet's a wild, wild west. You get everything smacking you. As you get a little closer in, once you enter to the network, what travels between the public and the private side, or if you have zones, you want to start filtering that too. Whether it's inbound or outbound, what kind of traffic it is, because you're going to sniff it. All right, so we're going to create a DMZ route table, and I'm on D as in Delta. So DMZ, sorry.
Oh, you're just on. Okay.
Yeah, DMZ route table. Underscores are super handy because sometimes you'll find within Linux, it doesn't like spaces. So you can use dashes or underscores. If you put a space in certain things, it will actually make two things for you. Okay, you're going to associate this with your VPC. Okay, everybody there?
Yes.
I got helpers floating, so if you're stuck, just kick a hand. They'll come a running. Create. All right, close it out. Now, because we have this route table, what are we going to do with it? We have to edit it in routes. If you slide that up a little bit. Thank you. If you hear, where's it being routed right now? locally. Edit routes. And we are going to give it away out to the internet.
You want to make sure to click DMZ route, right? Not
Yes.
all the other ones.
No, one at a time. Just DMZ. We're on DMZ. You just created a DMZ route table, right? You want to stay on that one, and we need to go into Edit, Routes. If it says right here where it says Route Tables, we're going to edit the routes, and we're going to add a route. Now, destination to the internet is 0.0.0/0, just like it says on your paper. And then your target, how are we going out? Excellent. Internet gateway. And then you're going to use our prod. Everybody happy? Prod AGW. Yes. All right. Everybody ready? Hit save. Save routes. And close. We now gave our DMZ route away to the internet. Right? We are now going to associate the DMZ subnets with this route table. So go into Subnet Association, Edit. Now, this is the part where it's handy to use this little divider thing to scoot it over. Click both of the DMZ subnets. Everybody there? Yeah. So you're taking both of those subnets and you're associating with this route table. Okay?
This is what I was talking about earlier with the current route table.
Listen up.
So if it's not explicitly associated with any route, it's going to go to the main route table. So under current route table, you can see that it says main, and that's what happens when it's not associated or explicitly associated with a certain route. Okay.
Everybody got that? Okay. Go ahead and hit save. So notice this is what Nick was talking about. Notice the explicit subnet association is now sitting there. Everybody good? All right. Now, good habit. Uncheck this one. Go to prod. And we're going to go to routes. Where is this prod only able to route right now? Let's get it to the internet. So add a route. 0.0.0.0/0. So 4 zeros and a slash, and you want to send it through the internet gateway. Edit routes. All right. Now once this is here, hit save. And this is wonderful because you as you're thinking about this, imagine putting like a map of your network and how the flows are starting to put together. This is really neat. Okay. Now, we're handling our DMZ, right? Good. Now, E is an echo. We're going to create a public route table. So uncheck the prod, create a route table, and we're going to call this one public route table. All right. Well, okay, hold on 1 second. We're going to make one change. So hit cancel. Because we're going to cut this down. See, we have our prod route table. Change this one to public. So go to your pencil. Yeah, prod will become public, so we don't have too many. Good point. So public route table and hit your check mark. Now, notice too that since we already had designed this, it's already connected to the internet. Yes, and here, since it should be, everybody got it to the internet? Go to the subnet associations, and we're going to edit those, and we're going to take our public subnets and associate them. Everybody tracking? Okay. So both of these publics are now there. Notice, pause there for a minute. Let's remember what Nick was talking about. These DMZs now have a route table that's the DMZ route table. Once you associate these, hit save. Now these are explicitly associated with this public route table. Any questions about that? What we're doing is we're taking our traffic and we're separating it into different pieces. Imagine like a big river, and you want to cut it up into different streams so you can filter it. This is the neat thing about what we're doing is if you ever wanted to run a tap, you could separate that traffic and go, just show me this. Let me see this. Now there's really pretty cool tools that you can use that are inherent to AWS themselves. And then what you want to do is start filtering this thing and using tools that we'll have another session on Splunk. I'm working on someone right now to give us a Barney Simple Splunk again, so we can do a simple deployment. And you can feed this into Splunk if you want to. And there's tools for that. So everybody good so far? Yes? Okay. Taking copious notes, right? All right. Well, let me tell you the good news.
And now we're doing private?
No. We're coming to that. Yeah, we're going to get there. So we want to do the private one, but I'm going to tell you some good news in a minute. You are going to enjoy this to pieces because we're not going to do the private next because we're going to associate that with NAT. We're going to actually work with NAT. But I got some news for you. All my helpers, stand up. These helpers are going to come to you and you're going to erase everything you just did. And you're going to rebuild it.
You're going to take your notes.
I know. Welcome to my world. All right, so here's how we're going to do this. The helpers are going to come around. Helpers. And we're going to go to your VPC, to where it says your VPC. You're going to highlight it and delete it. And it's going to wipe all that stuff out. So every helper is going to come and see you. If you decide that you don't want to do that, come talk to me because I'm going to introduce you to the parking lot. All right, go ahead and kill them.
It could be a door or a window.
Either one you want, whatever makes you happy.
Okay, so just to kind of recap what we've done so far. So we've created a VPC, which is your virtual private cloud. We've created 6 subnets. So your DMZ. Okay. So the 6 subnets. So your DMZ 1 and 2, your public 1 and 2, and your private 1 and 2. And then route tables for each of those. Well, minus private for now. And then also your internet gateway has been attached. And routes through your DMZ and your public subnets. So what we have to do now, though, is for the private subnets, be able to actually give it a route to the internet, right? Because if you have boxes, you need to be able to update them. They need to be able to reach out for whatever reason. It needs to have a route. In order to reach out in a private subnet, who can tell me what you need? Okay. What is NAT? Okay. What does it do? Translates an address.
Requirements.
Well, I mean, yes, exactly. So it takes a private IP and then basically translate it into a single public IP so you can reach out to the internet. So what we actually need to do now, on the left-hand side, you see where it says NAT Gateway? Click on that. So we have an internet gateway, now we have a NAT gateway. NAT gateway is AWS's service, basically, to be able to NAT from. You can still do a NAT instance, so let's just cover this down, because if you read into it, NAT instance would be just like you're deploying NAT on prem. It's a lot of configuration, it's a lot of managing, all that stuff. AWS made it really simple with a NAT gateway, and basically you're going to see how simple it is. So hit create NAT gateway. All right, and then, so if it needs to reach out to the internet, what subnet does it need to be in? No, not what route does it need, but it needs to be in a subnet that has access to the internet, right? Right? So in this case, we're just going to put it in our public subnet 1. Right? So that is where this gateway is essentially going to live so that it can actually reach out to the internet and do that translation for us. Right? So we put it in subnet or public subnet 1. Now, that create new EIP. All right? An EIP is an elastic IP. So it is Amazon's way of basically allocating to you a public IP address. All right? You can do this in different ways. For NAT, it has to be an EIP. So, or an elastic IP. So they'll allocate you a public IP and then you assign it to it. So for this case, we need to hit create new EIP. And down here you'll see that you had a creation that was successful and here's your IP. Everybody's going to have a different one, right? So this is a 3.224.20.198. You guys could have whatever. I mean, it's a huge pool that they could give you from. So this is your allocation ID now. So if you were to look on a different screen, you would see that. So let's go ahead and hit create NAT gateway. All right, so now we have created the NAT gateway. This can take a couple of minutes. So it's basically putting that NAT gateway in the public instance, assigning that public IP to it. So basically, takes a couple of minutes. If you want to just hit the refresh button every now and then.
Name it.
Oh, yeah. So go up to the name. You can slide it over a little bit, hit the pencil like we've been doing. And then we're just going to call it NAT Gateway 1, I believe. So this goes back to the tagging, basically, right? So some screens are going to give you the ability to put the tag in right away. Some of them you'll have to do after the fact. It really just depends. But all the tagging that you're going to see is going to be viewable down here. And you can add new tags to it. So for now, the tag is just a key and a value. So our key is the name. The value is whatever name it is, right? So just because it's on the instructions, we're going to do 2 NAT gateways, just for redundancy in this case. So let's go and hit create NAT gateway again. And this one though, so we've already put one on public subnet 1. We're going to want this one to go on public subnet 2. And then same thing, create a new EIP, and then create the NAT gateway. And then name it just NAT gateway 2. Now, with NAT, also notice here, so we have this elastic IP. Oh, God, I don't even know how to not block it for you guys. So we have the elastic IP that's associated with it, but then in the next column, you have the private address, right? So we have, for the top one, it's a 192.168.4.247.
Go back to your first page and look that should correspond to the range that's on your first page.
Yes. Okay, so while the second one's pending, we can still mess with the routes at least for, oh, okay, there we go. If you don't have both of yours up right now, don't worry about it. We're just going to deal with NAT Gateway 1 for now. All right, so now we need to go back to our route tables, and we need to create a new route table. So this is going to be our private route table.
If I helped you and you already made one, please don't make another one.
Yes, if you already have one made, don't worry about it. And it's going to go in prod VPC, because it's the only one we have. And then hit create. Okay, so we have it created. We're going to hit routes again, and we're going to hit edit routes and add a route. So we're still trying to reach out to the internet, so we need 0000/0. And here's where it's different. And this is where it just becomes super simple on how AWS has set this up. So we're going to hit NAT gateway, and it's automatically going to populate with our NAT gateways. We just have to choose which one. All right? So we're just going to hit NAT gateway 1, and then we're going to save the route. Once it's saved, we're going to hit subnet associations, edit the subnet associations, and we're going to add our 2 private subnets into that.
We're just going to do 1 per. So
You just want 1 per? Okay. So then for NAT Gateway 1, just add private 1. There we go. Okay. So the route has been changed, right? Is everybody at least to that point? Your route has been changed, and it's going through the NAT, correct? All right, so after we do that, we're going to go over to subnet associations.
Wait, say it again, I'm sorry.
So we're going to go to subnet associations at the bottom.
I'll show it to you. So 1 over tab from route, subnet association.
Yes.
Yep. So if you're on subnet associations, So our dotted lines here are basically showing our routes so far.
Okay.
Right? So our DMZ and our public subnets are all routing out the IGW over here. We've put both of our NAT gateways in public subnets. So NAT1 is in public 1 and NAT2 is in public 2. Our private instances have routes to the NAT gateway. These are hosted in the public subnets, which have routes to the internet gateway, or out to the internet. All right? Does this help with knowing what's kind of going on right now? Yes. Okay. So at this point, so once we, does everybody have their private route table 2 done? Yes? Yes. Okay. So at this point, from a networking perspective, we're ready to go. All right? So we have all of our subnets are actually routing. We have our private subnets that are routing through the NAT gateway. So now if we put instances, or EC2 instances, in DMZ1, or the DMZ subnets, or the public subnets, we would be able to get to them. Minus a few things that take place when we actually launch the instance. To get to private one, so you wouldn't be able to actually route to there because you're not going to be able to get into a NAT. NAT allows out and then back in. But we wouldn't be able to get directly to there. You could just run like a jump box, right? If you had a bastion host, maybe another name you might know by. So that's a little bit farther down the line. Right now, it's just going to be getting an EC2 instance and public subnet, I believe. Is it public subnet? Okay. Sweet. All right, so on your public instances, just where Rob is at right now, select your public subnet 1. So if you're not at subnets, go to subnet. And then select your public subnet 1. And then go up to actions. And then this modify auto assign IP setting. Go ahead and click on that. And then just like Rob did, you're going to enable auto assign public IPv4 addresses.
So go to subnets.
All right. So when you enable auto assign, just like Elastic IPs, you're going to get some crazy looking IPs, right? They're going to be like, you could have one that's in like the 54 range and another one that's in like the 172 range, or well, not 172 range. Let's say the 210 range. So it could be all over the place. The one thing though about auto assign public IPs, your IP is not guaranteed to you. So let's say that you have to restart that instance for whatever reason. Neither your private or your public IPs are actually guaranteed when you restart. So Route 53 is Amazon's DNS, basically. So they have an entire service that's around that either you can create an entire new DNS environment, or you can just basically connect your existing DNS environment into the cloud and extend it. Yes?
Is that where the beginning, when you create a VPC, where you say whether you want default or dedicated, makes a difference? Like if you were to select dedicated, would you keep your IP addresses?
No, so the only thing that so the tenancy is only basically whether you want to share a host. So basically, all EC2 is, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit more, but all these instances are just VMs. They're just hosted in Amazon, right? So if you're saying that I want dedicated tenancy, it means I don't want anybody else on this box. I want this box to myself for my entire VPC, right? Shared tenancy is I'm okay if somebody else has a VM on the same box I'm on. Once again, it could come down to your requirements. So security plays a big role.
So public subnet 2, make sure you go back, modify, check it, save it. So both publics have that enabled.
We're good to go. So we're going to actually launch an instance now. All right, so back up to services. And we're going to go basically under the compute tab and EC2. So EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. It is basically, just like I said, VMs that are running in an AWS data center. So the dashboard is where you're going to get all of your basic information about any of your hosts, anything that has to do with your servers, or, well, actually a lot of stuff, but mainly around your servers and how you're actually getting there. So Rob was just at the screen though. elastic IPs, this is where you're going to find those elastic IPs. So this is going to show exactly what your IPs are, what the allocation ID is, and since they're not assigned to an instance, they're assigned to NAT, this will be blocked, but you just know that it's actually to a NAT gateway.
Where are you at, VPC dashboard or?
We're EC2. Yep.
EC2.
And you should see this screen.
Yes.
And then you will hit where your elastic IPs are because we just asked for those, right?
So this is where you'll find all this information at. So once you've seen that, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the left-hand side and we're going to hit instances. Okay, so EC2 is really the bread and butter of AWS, all right? Like I said, it's VMs. You can do logical extensions of your on-prem environments. So basically what we're going to do now is we're going to launch a VM in AWS in the network that we just stood up, okay? So let's go ahead and hit launch instance. You can click either one. Now this is where if you make a mistake, you're going to start getting charged. All right, so pay attention. Right. All right, so everybody should see, and yeah, there is a little checkbox here for free tier only. All right, so I don't know if you guys really read into when you created the account, but free tier is basically for 6 months or a year. I think it's a year. They'll give you access to some of their resources and they won't charge you anything. It's basically a come and play. We want to show you how you can spend your money, so then you will spend your money. That's basically what they're doing. So Amazon Linux, they call it Aurora, or now it's Aurora 2. This is their own version of Linux. I love Aurora, so yeah. It's pretty much the best pieces of all Linux that's out there. But it's heavily based off of Red Hat Enterprise. So we're going to hit Amazon Linux 2. You just go over to the right-hand side and hit select. So your instance type. So we just chose what operating system. Now we have to choose the instance type. Instance type is also where you can start spending a lot of money. So Amazon has a ton of different choices, and this is all going to come down to, once again, yeah, right. But what your requirements are, right? Yeah, right. So whatever your requirements are really going to play in here, and this is more your requirements from a hardware perspective, right? Do you need a certain amount of CPUs? Do you need a certain amount of memory? What do you actually need? And that's going to play into what you choose here. The only thing that is available on the free tier option, though, is this T2 Micro. So T2 is basically Amazon's general purpose instance type. It's not meant to do heavy computing. It's not very memory intensive. It's not very data intensive. It's just come and play around is basically what T2 is. So you only get one CPU and one, they call it gigabytes, but it's really close to a gig. It's a little short of a gig. So that's why when you see here, you see that the capital G, lowercase I, and B. Don't ask me why they use gigabytes. They just do. So we're going to select T2 Micro. We're going to go down to the right-hand side and then configure instance details. So even in the console, they make it very simple to where if you actually needed to launch a ton of instances at a time, you could. So the biggest one here is the number of instances. I don't only have to launch one instance at a time. If they're all going to be configured the same way out the gate, I could put, well, there's a limit on instances, but I could put 10 in there and it'll launch all 10 of them at the same time. One thing to keep in mind with your tiered, or with your free tier, it says free tier, you only get it 720 hours a month. That's how they charge you. All right. So let's say today you spend up 4 hours of that. Well, now you only have 7 hours or 716 hours worth. So if you do 2 instances at a time, well, now you're 8 hours. It can get out of hand really quickly. Yes.
It's 750.
750 hours. Okay. So one instance is all we're going to launch. So we're going to have one in here. Purchasing option. Do not hit spot instance. Spot instance isn't a bad thing, but it's basically, you'll put pieces in there, say, I only want to have this instance up if it's only going to cost me 10 cents. Let's just throw out a number. It could be right now that it's at 17 cents, but based on demand, they will lower the price to have their resources being used. If it hits 10 cents, it's going to start launching spot instances for you. If you have something that you're really not worried about, that it just needs some data, or compute power, not data, you could hit spot instances and it'll actually basically load them into maybe like your auto-scaling group or things like that. So we won't worry about that for now. So don't select that. Next option is going to be your network. So this is going in our only VPC right now. So this is going in prod VPC. Subnet is going to be our public subnet 1. Notice how though beneath it, it tells you how many addresses you have available. All right. We're not going to hit 506 today, so don't worry about it. But if you were running in a prod environment where you were actually, allocating space out and maybe I only had 2 IPs left, well, do I have any plans for the future that I'm going to actually launch things in here? So the auto-assigned public IP, this is what we changed before, right? So by default, if we didn't go through and change this, this would be disabled, all right? So you would not by default get a public IP address. Since we changed it before we came in here, now the default is to enable it. Everything else, I would not worry about it for now. So go ahead and hit add storage. We're not going to change anything on here, but this is a good point to explain to you guys something that AWS does, and it just makes our life easier. So AWS has a storage service, if you will, called EBS. Stands for Elastic Block Storage. Basically, it allows you to take volumes of data and attach that size of a volume to the instance. So if I needed 80 gigs, I'm just going to call them gigs. I'm not going to call them giggies. But let's just say if I needed 80 gigs worth of storage, I can provision that here, right? And that'll automatically assign that block or that volume, they call them volumes, to the instance. Right? We don't need very much. 8 gig is the default. It's going to be general purpose SSD. It's pretty baseline for the T2 range. Now EBS can be attached and detached at any time. So if your instance goes unhealthy, but let's say you have stuff that is attached to that volume, you detach the volume, you launch a new instance, and then you attach that volume to it, and it's running like it didn't have a problem at all. So this is where that redundancy, reliability comes into play. So these are things that would actually take, let's say, a couple of hours on-prem. In the cloud, we can basically code this entire thing out to do it with no human interaction. Sir?
So is your boot included in this volume here?
Yes, so this main volume right here is your root volume. So after any volumes after this are just going to be additional volumes that you can just kind of. No, you can detach root.
Okay.
So you can detach root. So we're not going to add any more volumes though, but this is, once again, something that they don't actually put out there for you to see. EBS, you get charged for what you provision, not how much you use. So a lot of the cloud is you're going to get charged for what you use. EBS is you're getting charged for what you provision. All right? I've had customers who have put like 14 terabytes worth of EBS and just provisioned it, and it's not being used and it's not doing anything. And man, their bill skyrockets because of it. So, yeah. And they're like, why is my bill so high? Go look at your EBS. Because all this is going to look and tell you is that you have let's say 80 gigs that's provisioned, but it's not going to tell you how much is actually being used of that 80 gigs. So you could only be using a gig of that. You'll never know the difference unless you go in and actually look at that volume.
You just
All right?
add more later.
Yeah, and you can add more. You can add volumes as you go. So if you only need 8 gigs here, okay, now I need 10 additional ones, and I need 10 additional. You can do that. It's never. I'm not going to say never, but there's very few cases where you want to just go in and make a huge volume.
Means it can scale up and down.
Yes.
If you need it for term elastic. So if you need more, you can provision more. You can always cut it back.
Yes. All right. So next is going to be to add tags. So tags on your server, just to kind of go a little bit more into it, and every company is going to have different requirements on what your tagging actual process is. But, we've been just doing name and whatever the value is of it for now, right? So name is the key, value is whatever the name is. But you also got to think from a different perspective of what if you're looking at something that internally would be considered like, internally highly confidential, right? You want to have a tag for that because you want to make sure that nobody else has access to it, even if you're getting audited, right? They're going to see it, they're going to see the tag, but that means you don't let them into that resource for whatever reason, you find a different one, all right? So, yeah, so you can do environment. So Amazon has a baseline set of tags that they use, or that I guess are generically available. You can create your own tags. It's just a different process. So, just like Rob did, we just put the name, VPC test instance, so just follow along the same way. And then environment is production. This relates to your Python. So if you, let's say you create a script that makes a call, and it says, tell me how many production instances I have, tell me that I have in this, the idea is to call this information. What Nick was saying earlier is you have to automate. So do you really want to go in there and count all the things when you have 400 of them? No. You need to create scripts to bring that back to you. And that's where these keys and values come in for those who are coders to make this automated. Yes. Okay. So next, configure security group. Oh, so don't, yeah, you can click configure security groups now. Yeah, you're fine. All right, so security groups in AWS. This is, so in AWS you have 2 layers of security. You have your network ACLs, which are basically your boundary protection, so your subnets. And then you have security groups. Security groups are actually your resource protection. Key thing to remember between security groups and network ACLs. Network ACLs are stateless. So you need a defined inbound and outbound rule for traffic to be able to come in or leave. So security groups, though, are stateful. So you only need basically an inbound, well, either way. Either direction. So if you're leaving and then it's trying to come back in, it's going to automatically know that that traffic is allowed. If it's coming in and then trying to go back out, it's going to be allowed. So stateful is bidirectional. Traffic is allowed as long as you have a session created. And then stateless is you have to have defined rules for both ways. Okay? So for our instance here, we're going to create a new security group. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. All right? And as you work more in AWS, you'll probably gather it because it just makes your security groups disgusting. A lot of people, what they do when they launch a new instance, if they don't have a security group to automatically check, they just hit create new security group, come down here, change their rules, and they leave all of this gunk in here. This makes tracking your security groups impossible because you have all of this that's just showing in your dashboard for security groups. And when you have 100 different security groups, yeah, it gets nasty. So when you hit create new security group, go down to your security group name, and then we're just going to name it test VPC _SG. And you do have to have a description here. So you have to have a description. Let's take all of that out. Yeah, we can just, so usually in your description, and this is something that I like to do, everybody has their own way of putting their descriptions in. So I like to put like what it is, what protocol I'm actually going to be using on this. There's certain best practices around security groups. So TCP 22 is probably the best way to do it. You know that 22 is SSH. A lot of the times what AWS will say, or other companies, they all have their own rules. Once again, it's based off of what your requirements are and how you build your network. But you have one generic, or more generic, let's say, security group. And that's saying that I'm gonna, let's say it's ICMP, SSH, and RDP, right? Those are basically your management protocols to be able to get into the boxes that you need to access. So you're gonna have one security group with that you're gonna attach, all right? And then after that you have, let's say, an application security group. This is where it gets really specific based on what you're actually doing. So Splunk, just because I'm working on Splunk right now, 8000, 8088, and 8089 are specific ports to Splunk. So I have an application security group that allows a connectivity over those ports. Right? So right now, we're just managing. We have no application that's running here, so that means we have no need to open anything other than 22 and if you really wanted to, ICMP. All right? And this is a Linux box, you're not going to RDP into it. So, all right, so does everybody have TCP_22 for the description? All right, so down here, now under type, you have one, I guess, block that's already there. Just hit the drop-down menu and hit SSH. All right, little bit of a story time here. And this is where this gets really important. I had a guy that was working on one of the accounts. Rob's shaking his head because he knows all about it. He was working on one of our accounts. He was testing a proxy, or a forward proxy. Unfortunately, this individual decided that they wanted to leave basically any on the security group. So I come into work one day, and I have a nice email from Amazon saying that there's an abuse report on one of my instances. So I automatically go into this whole thing of like, what the heck happened? All right, this is all in dev, right? This isn't prod. This isn't dev, but that still doesn't matter. Even in dev, you don't want to put any. So I go through and I start looking at everything that's going on. I look at the VPC flow logs. I'm looking at CloudTrail. I'm looking at all these different tools to tell me what happened. And I'll tell you right now, it looked like that this proxy server was port scanning the entire internet. It was nuts. So what we basically learned, one, there was any rule from it. Two, someone in another country got access to the box and basically tried to go and start scanning another rather large company's internal network. Yeah. So that's why this is so important. All right. One, and also, just as a side note, any on 53 for recursive DNS is not allowed in Amazon. They will tear you down for that. So any rules are not good at all. You always want to lock it down. All right? Keeps you out of trouble. Make sure the bad guys can't touch your stuff. And everybody's happy. So what we're going to do for today is the source, you can either put in a custom, an anywhere, or a my IP. We're going to hit my IP. So on the drop down, hit my IP. Your description is going to automatically fill with the description for the actual security group. So, and then, so the one that I'm normally okay with having from anywhere is ICMP. There are, you guys might be able to speak more onto it. There are, I guess, some potential attacks that could happen with ICMP from any. Sir.
So what if somebody's like protocol, port range, and descriptions are not?
So these protocols and port range, so you can actually put custom rules in. So Rob, could you add another rule just so we can kind of show it? And then, so this custom TCP rule. So we know it's going to be TCP. So this is like, so say for Splunk, right? I need to add in 8000, 8088, and 8089. And I believe they're all TCP, right? So there's no actual like button for that because it's not like a well-known protocol. So I have to go in and create a custom TCP rule, and then I replace the port range with 8088. Or I could do, technically since I'm using 8088 and 8089, I could just do 8088 through 8089 in a single rule, right? So and this is what it comes down to your application, right? So for now, yeah, requirements, big one. So we'll leave ICMP out of it because I don't think we'll have any issues with it. If we do have issues with it, I'll show you guys how to go back through so we can troubleshoot what's going on. So let's go ahead and hit review and launch. So this is where it's basically going to go through everything that you just set up, but it's going to put in like a nice little readable version for you. Excuse me. And then we'll allow you to actually go through. If you notice something on here that maybe doesn't look right or whatever it is, you can go through on the far right-hand side and hit the edit whatever part that we went through. All right? So last stage is going to be to hit the launch button. Okay. So now we're going to select our key pair. Just for full transparency, you do not have to move forward with a key pair. It's very important that you do. From a security perspective, you really want to move forward with a key pair. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new key pair. There are ways that, once again, based on your requirement, There are a lot of companies that don't actually like hitting create new key pair because Amazon is basically creating your key pair for you. Some people are uncomfortable with that. So there are ways that you can actually upload your public key in and then use that to actually assign it to your instances. That way, someone can't come back and say that Amazon created it and they have both sides of your key and, you know, requirements. Let's just go with that. So hit create new key pair, and we're going to name it VPC test KP. Now, good news, Amazon made this dummy proof, thankfully, when you're creating a new key pair. It will not allow you to launch the instance until you download the key pair. It is blocked out. So once you have your name in there, hit the download key pair button. This is going to give you a PIM file. So for Linux users, you're pretty much done there. For Windows, we got to go into PuTTY or PuTTYgen, convert it to a PPK, and then log into it using PuTTY. Let's launch it first.
All right, so everyone have their, notice when they downloaded, if you're in Firefox, you want to open its location and find it. See it right here? Everybody see it?
Yes, make sure that you know where this is at, because once you launch this instance, you will not be able to get back to it. So if you lose this, the key file, you will not be able to get back to it, and you'll basically have to restart the entire process.
Okay, go ahead and launch your instance. Once you have your PIM files, click on where it says launch. And now you will see that it says your instance is now launching. You can actually look at that view log if you want. Or you can go to the instance itself and notice that its state is pending. If you're on a Mac, stand by, because we got two ways we're going to do this.
Yes.
The first thing we're going to do, and we can step through, is we're going to create the PPK and go ahead and run it through the Windows, and we'll do it with Mac. For Windows users, pay attention. First thing you want to do, as the instructions said, is you want to launch PuTTYgen. Okay? Everybody with me on this screen? Everybody on me on this screen. Thank you, buddy. Yep. All right. So, you have PuTTY generator up? Yep. Okay, as the instruction says, we're going to click load. Now, do you remember where you put your PPK? You go into where your PIM file is. Notice you don't see it. Yeah, there's a reason. See where it says the type of file? Right. Go to all files. Got it? Yeah. Double click it, and it says, hey, I just loaded your key. Everybody there? But the big thing is, these PIM files are keys to your kingdom. So you want to make sure that wherever they're located, that you keep them secure. Now, we're going to kill all this today. No worries. But if you do this in a prod environment, make sure your PIM files and all of your keys are locked down somewhere that no one can go and get them. Remember, the only thing a PIM file is it's a file that has a unique number in it. And you can right-click and open it in Notepad and view it, just like you can any certificate that you have. Big thing with Cisco is folks are coming in and they're like, what's a certificate? And they go pontificating. All they wanted to hear was it was a file. That's all they care. All right, so everybody got that? Okay. Once we have that, then we're going to save the private key. So right up underneath load, it says save private key. Everybody see that? Yes. Roger that. Hit save private key, and it says yes. Do you want to put a passphrase on it or without? You're going to say for now, we're going to say yes. Everybody good? Okay, then you're going to name it VPC test KP. Okay? And we're going to save this as a PPK, not a PIM. Test KP, and then hit save. Now, if you notice, when I open up my Explorer again, here's my PIM file, and here is my VPC test KP that I just created today on 8/17. Does everybody see that? PPK. Sweetness. Okay, so now you have your PPK, right? All right, perfect. Now, what we're going to do is you do not need PuTTY generators to knock it down. You don't need it anymore. You made your PPK. So PuTTY is used for SSH, right? Right, okay. So what we're going to do is we're now going to take an SSH into our instance. A couple things I want you to notice here. When you're using PuTTY, well, I'll teach you a shortcut. You want to know the host name or IP, but you also need to know the default username for Amazon. that default username, marker, sexy man's going to put it up there. It's EC2-user. I'm going to type it up there, no worries. And then you're going to put an @ sign. Okay? So, up here, in the box that I'm in, you're going to type in EC2-user, and then put an @ sign. Everybody with me? So, EC2-user, and put an @ sign. Yeah, lowercase, please. EC2-user @ Now, here's the thing that, well, you need to really pay attention to. Everybody has a different IP address that they're going to plug into this, okay? So please don't type my IP address, because you don't have my PPK. See this public IPv4 address right here? Amazon makes it super simple, because right next to that number, you're going to see these little copy to clipboard. How fun. Hit that, bring up your PuTTY, and Control V. Now, on the left-hand side, we're going to use SSH, right? There's a plus sign beside where it says SSH. Hit that. Click on the word AUTH, just like I did. Click on the word, and you're going to see a screen like that. See it right there where it's highlighted in blue? Now, what you're going to do is you're under it says private key file, you're going to hit browse. And you're going to go in your PIM, wherever you put your PPK file, and you're going to find it. So everybody has that screen. Yes? Okay, something I want to tell you again. This is how important it is for you to secure and know your PIM files. This is the naming schema that Nick was talking about that'll make your security people's head fall off. If your naming schema is bad, I'm like, I don't know what that belongs to. And this is the thing when you're talking about asset control, your assets are not just the physical assets. Privileged account security is something that you will absolutely get your can handed to you. Dr. Chase Cunningham had lunch with him about 4 weeks ago in Chicago, right? Zero trust. He said, the attacks are not any different, ladies and gentlemen. They're just more of them. That means we suck right now at doing what we do. We're not correcting that. So really basic things like where are we putting our passwords? Put it somewhere where it's secured. So find your PPK, double click it, and you notice what did it do? It dropped in the location for PuTTY to go and snatch that PPK, and we're going to hand that to Amazon. Okay? All right. If you have this, if you go back up to the top and you click on the word session, you should see EC2-user, an IP address that's yours, and you've now loaded your PPK. Cool? All right, sweet. Last thing you want to do is hit open, say yes to the certificate, and I'm in. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to type CD, Charlie Delta, space, / V as in Victor, A as in Alpha, R as in Romeo. So once you're in and you type that, I'd like you to type LS, Lima, Sierra, and hit enter. This should give you all the default directories in your Linux box.
So if you're on a Linux box, go back to your console and then hit the connect button. So this is where it becomes very simple for Linux users. This connect button is going to run you through everything that you need to do from terminal. All right. If you're in Linux, do you know where terminal is at? All right. So if you're in Linux and you found terminal, now you need to get to the directory where your PIM file is located. All right. For most people, it should be in downloads. Where Rob is at, he's in, basically he ran a CD, or CD is a change directory, and then went to var. All right. So var is basically, if you go var log, I'm sure some people have heard of it, var log is basically like the biggest thing on where you're going to find all the logs. It's pretty straightforward. Var though, or just var in general, you can create directories basically wherever you want. You just got to know where they're at. So it runs exactly like a regular Windows computer or anything like that. It's just, if you're in command line for Linux, you don't have a nice little GUI that's telling you like, oh, go to downloads and then go to this folder and do all this. No, you kind of just got to figure out where it's at. All right. So from var, I want everybody to just do a PWD. PWD.
I know, but what does it stand for?
Present working directory.
Where you at?
This is really good. So I'm kind of weird in Linux. I always have to just start back over, right? Because once I get too deep into like one of the files or applications or wherever it is I'm at, I get lost and I just need to start back over from home and find my way back again, all right? Everybody's different. There's some people that I know that they're just like, oh, you just got to go here, 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 and you know they're all about like their double dots and going backwards in a directory and yeah, yeah, right. So yeah, tilde, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this, just as basic, all right. So CD is a change directory, PWD is present working directory. If you need to make a new directory, all right, mkdir, dir, make dir. Yep, so do a make dir mkdir. Yes, you will have to do, oh, that's a good point. So everything in, so right now, you're an EC2 user, all right? EC2 user is a part of the sudoers, all right? Which basically means that you have elevated privileges. Not by default, you have to put in sudo. So you have to do sudo mkdir, and then whatever we want to, sudo, okay, there we go. Yeah, so we'll do sudo mkdir, and we'll call it sexy.
My wife better try to find this file.
Yep, so once you have that in, press enter. If you get a permission denied, then you probably forgot to spell or put sudo in or had like a fat finger moment. Once you have that, you can just do an ls. It just lists all your current directories or current options basically. Shorthand to it, so I've moved away from ls and I just go ll. It's the same thing except instead of it being long, it lists, so instead of it being wide, it lists it long. So it's a little bit easier. On the far left, everybody sees here that it has a whole bunch of random letters, right? So you got your DR, WXR, -XR, -X. I cannot remember it. Does anybody in here know the different, well, not you. You asked. Yeah. So each of these are kind of broken up. There's 3 sections. Well, but these are the different groups, if I remember.
Sorry, for a global user and
I can't remember. Okay. Global user and owner. So I hope you're right because I can't remember. Somewhere around there, all right? So that's what when you're doing a chmod. So for those of us that are on Mac, right? We did a chmod 400, right? On our PIM file. So when you do a 400, it's global. So it's saying that anybody can use it, and it's just a read, right? So the owner and the user, right? Yeah, owner user couldn't do anything to it. It just had to be able to be run from like a global perspective. Now there's like some of the the well-knowns. It's like if you did like a chmod 777.
Everyone can do everything.
Exactly. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Once again, when everyone can do everything, it really doesn't end out well. You know, 400 for what we did as far as being able to read the PIM file. What's the other one? 700? Yeah, so 700 to where everybody, well actually I guess it's the same thing. It's global that you can do everything and then the users and the owners can't do crap. Yeah, oh, other group, okay. So when you read in here, if you have a DRWXR, you can basically do everything. Read, write, execute, right? If you have an XR, so you can execute it and you can read it. And if you just have an X, you can execute it. All right? And that's what these are all for, is that they basically add up to the 7, right? So if you did a chmod 777,
then that means that everybody could read, write, and execute it. If you just did a 700, then just the global would be able to read, write, and execute. Everybody else would not be able to do anything. So that's how permissions work in Linux. But you can assign different groups to it. Like these are all owned by root. So root would be considered the owner here. So, you know, they could basically do whatever. For most of these at least. All right. So now that we have LS down, we've looked at the permissions, all of that, we're in the box. So we've done a makedir, done ls, pwd, cd. Now, really just to be able to remove it, so removing a directory is still sudo in the same way that we did. And then it's rm for remove.
Is that what you want us to do right now?
Yep. So just do sudo rm. And yes, there is a space. So sudo space rm space sexy.
You need a dash R in there.
For the directory, yeah. So do a dash R at the end of it, or at the end of rm. So sudo rm dash r, and there's spaces in between all of these. So sudo space rm space dash r space sexy. And then enter. And then if you run ll or ls again, sexy is now gone. So those are your basic commands on being able to actually navigate Linux. All right. In this directory, say you needed to create a new file, right? So let's just say somewhere down the line you're like wanting to create a script and you need to put it in. What you have to use in Linux is a visual editor, basically. There's a ton of them out there. I personally like using Vim. I know, everybody hates it. A lot of people love using Nano.
Straight in the text, straight in the command line.
Yeah, right. So what you do here, and you have to use sudo again, right? So we're just going to create a random file. We're going to do sudo, and then space Vim, Victor India Mike, and whatever Rob wants to name it.
Sexy.
All right. Sudo Vim sexy.
Do we use Vim space sexy?
Yes. So sudo space Vim space sexy. All right. So everybody go ahead and hit enter.
Vim?
Yes. Victor India Mike. In Vim. All right. By default, you're not going to be able to actually put text in. You have to hit I for insert. And then it'll say insert, right? So it'll just tell you where you're exactly at. Here we go.
It's in there.
So once it's actually in there, in order to get out of insert mode, you just hit escape. And then to save the file, you do a :X.
Or WQ.
Or, yeah, WQ.
W meaning write, Q meaning quit.
All right, so just X out of your session, whether you're in terminal or in PuTTY. And then that interrupts the SSH connection. So you've disconnected. For your instance, so select your instance, go to actions, and then instance state, and then make sure you hit terminate. And then yes, terminate. So it's going to shut it down. And then it's still, so even after we finish with all of this, it's still going to show is instance state, it's going to say terminated. It's gone. It just, they like to keep it there for a little while for whatever reason. All right, so once it's shutting down, now we need to go to services, and then to VPC, and then go down to NAT gateways. And then select one, actions, delete.
They'll only allow you to do
one at a time. So do the same thing for both of them. This takes a few minutes. So just be aware of that. So the NAT gateways take a little bit of time. So we're kind of at a brief stop until they actually show deleted. So just keep on refreshing it So the first one showing is deleted now. If you're showing any is deleted, go to Elastic IPs. So it's not going to let you disassociate it on a NAT gateway. You got to wait till it finishes deleting, and then we release the address. Yeah, you got to, and with the NAT gateways, you got to be careful. And the reason I say that is because if you delete your NAT gateway and then you don't release the Elastic IP, they charge you for Elastic IPs that aren't currently in use. So if it's attached to something, then you're fine. If it's not, then okay. So when your Elastic IPs look like this, where it has like no instance, no private IP, no association ID, now you can go to actions and release the address.
You have to do them one by one again?
You do have to do them one by one. And make sure that they're both released. So once you've released your Elastic IPs, you can scroll all the way up and go to your VPCs, or my VPCs, or whatever it is. And then select the VPC, go to actions, and then delete VPC. This is going to delete everything else that we have set up already.
So having this network in place is not part of the free tier?
So you don't exactly get charged for VPCs and subnets and things like that. What you get charged for is the services that are in place. So if you want to leave it up, you can. Just, I mean, that's at your own risk to ensure that everything else, like when we delete the VPC, once we release those addresses, there shouldn't be anything else in place that you're going to get charged for. But by deleting the VPC, you're basically ensuring that you're not going to get charged for anything else.
Hey, by the way, before we get going, let's give a good-looking man there a round of applause. So thank you to Don, thank you to the whole board for being here. Hey, we'll have a 200 session coming soon. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you to Dave for doing testimonials. We love you and have a great day. Thank you.